time. Something has got to happen because we can no longer go down the path that we're going down. This country won't last another 6 months. This country won't last another 12 months if something doesn't happen. So it's time to flip the switch. It's time to get involved. It's time to move the line forward. And if you're not part of the solution, then you're part of the problem. So I don't care what flip the switch is. I don't care if that means that all of this nonsense is nonsense, or if some of it's true. All right. Welcome, Warriors, World Patriots, and my fellow Americans. My name is Mike. I'm the host of Liberty Warrior. Give me liberty or give me death. When tyranny becomes law, rebellion becomes duty. It is Monday, the start of the week, May 16th, 2022. And just so you guys know, just for the LGBTQ, in remembrance of them, I wore my Trump LGBTQ, which is liberty, guns, beer, and Trump. So I'm supporting them. Every alphabet in the every letter of the alphabet has a different meaning for me. So thought I'd show you guys that tonight. I am supporting Trump. So we got Andy in the waiting room for Miles Franklin. Tonight's episode is sponsored by Miles Franklin. If you guys need any of your silver or gold needs met, please contact them at info@milesfranklin.com. Use promo code Liberty Warrior Nation. We're going to talk about silver tonight and what it's doing, how it's fluctuating, and why Andy can give us a really good um, insight to that. And then we're going to talk about the economy as well, because Andy definitely pays attention to all that. So I'm pretty excited to have Andy back tonight. A lot to talk about, so I'm going to go ahead and bring him in. How you doing, Andy? How you doing, brother?
Hey, Mike, I'm good, brother. How about yourself? Good to see you.
It went from snow for a week and a half to like 75, 80 degrees here in Idaho, just like that.
Yeah, when I lived in Minnesota, that happened all the time. It would go from winter to summer. There was never much of a spring, but sometimes there was. But
We've had a
anyways, glad to hear the sun is shining and it's actually getting warm.
we've had a pretty good spring. Just some different weather than what we're used to. So it's all good. Everything's green, everything's standing tall and growing. The flowers and trees are budding and all that stuff. So, I'm grateful. I'm thankful for the weather that we do have in Idaho, because some people don't get to see. Well, I was in North Dakota for 10 plus years, so you
Yeah,
don't get to see some of the things you see here in Idaho. So I'm very grateful for where I live.
yeah, right on. I spent a lot of, our vault is in North Dakota in Fargo, so my operation. So I spent a lot of time there, and I don't know if there's a place in the United States quite like North Dakota in terms of temperature. When it was cold in Minnesota, it was really cold in North Dakota. So it's kudos to you for being able to brave that for a decade.
2013, I was still wearing my insulated bibbed overalls in June, and there was still a little bit of ice left on the lake in June.
I believe it. I believe it. I believe it.
But enough of North Dakota. We're gonna roll on and talk about the fluctuation of silver, and I'm gonna turn it over to you, Andy. But you know, uh, Snafu did a really good video that I paid attention to. It was either yesterday or the day before, and talked about silver prices actually possibly maybe hitting $18.50 an ounce. And I know that you have a lot more insight on that than I do. There's no way for any of us to have a crystal ball and tell you exactly what's going to happen, but it has been down for quite a while now. It went from about $26 an ounce down to it was under 21 just last week when I placed another order. So let's start off there,
Today
Andy.
it's
And
today we're back up. Yeah, 2170 right now today. So yeah, you know um, silver and gold have, well, gold different. Gold has really kind of held its own, but silver is certainly underperformed. Um, I don't feel any different about it. I still believe it's the most undervalued asset on the planet. On so many levels, it's needed in so many capacities industrially, and it's experienced a monetary renaissance. It is wealth. There's a concerted effort to hold the price down. It is greatly underperformed. But let's look at it from a broader perspective and take manipulation out of the equation for a minute, because it's manipulated. All markets are manipulated. This one more than just about any, because of its concentrated position by just a couple of big banks on COMEX. But let's take that out of the equation and look from a broader perspective. Currently, in the United States, there is a 0.5% allocation to precious metals in people's portfolio. The average, or the mean, over the last 40 years has been 2.5%. The high was in 1980 at 8% allocation to people's portfolios. So if all we do from a standpoint of demand is to reach the average of the past 40 years, you're talking a fivefold increase in physical demand and allocation. And I'm talking, from Joe Sixpack to the Harvard Endowment Fund and everything in between. So there's a lot of room for accumulation. And I think that the market right now still believes that the Federal Reserve is going to be able to get tough on inflation, which we know they can't. But the market doesn't know that yet. The market still thinks they will while engineering a soft landing. Now, not only has Fed Chairman Powell come out and said he can't do that it's going to be bumpy, that he can't guarantee a soft landing. they can't raise rates, and they're not getting tough on inflation. And we talked about that last time, how I believe the scapegoat will be the Saudis, the Russians, the Chinese, the Indians, and the movement away from the dollar as the petrodollar. But they can't get tough on inflation. Look, they raised interest rates by 50 basis points. And you have inflation at 9%. So the federal funds rate is at 0.75%, but inflation is at 9%. It's spitting in the ocean. They're not doing anything about it. They haven't sold off their balance sheet, and they're not going to do it until June. And really, they're not even selling it off. What they're doing is letting the bonds mature and just not renewing them. They just fall off the balance sheet to the tune of 60 or $80 billion a month starting in June. But here's the deal. When the market realizes that one of two things are going to happen, either inflation is going to run out of control because the market will realize that at a certain point, the Fed is going to reverse course. So if they tighten and they continue to tighten, take out of the equation everything we've talked about Saudi Arabia and the likelihood of the dollar being dumped globally in mass, as it pertains to the petrodollar, which I really do believe is the end game. But if they really do try to get tough on inflation and they raise rates substantively, you'll see the markets collapse and the economy will go into a depression. I mean, a massive recession, if not the Greater Depression. You have an economy that is addicted to stimulus. You have prices on everything that have been addicted to stimulus, real estate and equities and bonds. They've all reached levels that are obscene. And when that realization comes, a lot of people think that the Fed will tighten until that happens, until the market really starts to violently react, and the Fed will change course, pivot, go back to lowering rates and pouring more money into the system. When that happens, not only does that signal the demise and the end of the dollar, it also signals the end of all credibility in the Federal Reserve. At that point, I truly do believe people will start to get it. Now, if this happens in a much more swift fashion as a result of something like OPEC announcing we're going to take other currencies for oil, when we see already Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, and Russia selling oil to China in yuan, after 50 plus years of it only, almost 50 years rather, of it only being dollars. And that's what makes the dollar the world reserve currency. If we see that peg break, that hegemony, that dollar hegemony, like that, people are going to realize. Now, I'll ask you this, seriously, where do you put your money any longer that isn't inversely correlated to a rise in rates? Now, ultimately, if rates rose high enough, then gold also becomes inversely correlated to it through something called Gibson's paradox, which is the inverse relationship between real rates and precious metals, gold and silver included. But here's the deal. What's going to happen this time is that rising rates are going to come on the heels of a declining and crashing dollar. And so in this environment, he or she who loses least wins. Let me give you an example of what I mean by that, okay? And I'm going to use gold as an example more than silver, okay? And ultimately, gold and silver have a 90% correlation in the way that they move and have moved throughout all of history. But let's take a look at the yearly numbers. Now, I did this yesterday for a podcast I was on yesterday, but the numbers are pretty much exactly the same. For the year, the S&P is down 18%. The NASDAQ, which is the big tech component, is down 28%. And for whatever reason, a bear market is deemed a 20% decline or more. So we're almost in the bear market territory for the S&P 500. We are deep into bear territory for the NASDAQ. The Russell 2000, which is a much broader indication of the economy in the United States because you have all the big multinational companies not in it. It's more an indication of US-based companies, smaller to mid-sized companies. That's down 29%. Better indication of the US economy. The Dow Jones is down 13%. Muni bonds are down 10%. Treasury bonds are down 20%. High yield debt is down 13%. And gold is up $10 on the year. Now, silver's down. Gold is flat or up $5-10. The point of it is that gold is holding its own. Silver has underperformed. And for whatever reason, when you see a company like Bank of America short over a year's worth of silver production, over 1 billion ounces, you know, why in God's green earth are they short this kind of amount of silver? That's the same thing that put Bear Stearns out of business when silver went to 21 from 12. They held the largest short position in the world, and silver went way up, and it put them out of business. This was confirmed by Bart Chilton on the Chris Marcus podcast, the head of the ex-head of the CFTC. JP Morgan paid a $920 million fine for suppressing the silver price. What is it about silver that is so important that it keeps the U.S. government, in my opinion, allowing and maybe even condoning and behind keeping the price of silver down? But here's the thing. It's much easier to manipulate a market when all is well in the US dollar, but that's not the case any longer. And I really do believe that we will reach a moment where you could see silver truly, truly explode in value. Now, what Scott said on Snafu, I didn't listen to it, but he's right. When you look at technical analysis, you know, and I'm not a big fan of technical analysis in the rigged market because the riggers know how to paint the tape to get the most out of technical analysis to their benefit. But I'll simply say this, that there is a gap. There is a gap between 21 and 19. So you could see it if it were to fall substantially below 21, that it would go to 19 or 1850. It would be temporary. And if it happens, you'll see premiums go to the moon like they have in the last 2 or 3 times this has happened. The first time it happened was in 2008 when the price of silver went from 21 to 9 in a week. And when that happened, every single mint on the planet was sold out of product and shut down for months on end. In fact, I thought we were going out of business. And when they finally came back online months later, we could start selling silver again. It was 100% premium with 8-week delivery delays from every mint on the planet: US, Canada, South Africa, Australia, Austria, United Kingdom. Didn't matter. You'd pay $19 or more for silver with $9 silver, and for silver coins with $9 silver, and you'd take 8-12-week delivery delays. This is a very high stakes game. And I guess all I can say is that, and this is going to sound almost cavalier, but it's not meant to be, Mike. You can't look at the price right now. You have to look at the fundamentals. You have to understand that this is a rigged game and it's manipulated for whatever reason. They don't want to let silver and gold accentuate themselves when they really should be. But in the case of a dollar that is on the verge of dying, they will not have the ability, in my opinion, to do that. They're either going to blow up the economy in the market or they're going to sacrifice the dollar. And all politicians have chosen the sacrifice of the dollar, going back as far as you can. The currency and inflation always comes before austerity and tough decisions. But I really, truly do think that what the Fed is talking about is a bunch of jawboning and bullshit. Truthfully, I think it all lies in the hands of the BRICS nations and the peg to well, it's not even a peg. It's just the relationship with the Saudi kingdom, which gives us the world reserve status. You know, I ask people all the time, what makes the dollar world reserve? No one ever knows, except your listeners know now. It's the protection of the Saudi kingdom that makes the dollar world reserve currency. Because in 1971, Nixon closed the gold window, making our dollar no longer backed by gold. And since 1974, it's been us protecting Saudi Arabia and their interests that has made the dollar world reserve, because they promised to only sell their oil in dollars globally. So every country on the planet has had to own dollars since 1974 if they wanted to buy oil, every single one of them. So when I came on your show last September and screamed how Saudi Arabia just signed that joint military cooperation agreement with Russia and Nigeria did the same thing, I knew this was big trouble. And now that they've signed agreements to actually sell their oil, not just be protected by it, but sell their oil for yuan, is a massive game changer. It signals the beginning of the end of the dollar as the petrodollar, which is the beginning of the end as the world reserve currency, which really creates a big problem. And that problem is that there's way more dollars outside the United States than there is within. there's 7 billion people outside the United States or more, and every one of their governments own dollars to buy oil to run their country. And if all of a sudden that changes and they can buy other currencies, because OPEC, in essence, is being protected now by China and Russia. Remember, Nigeria is part of the Belt Road Initiative. Saudi Arabia is being protected by Russia. Russia and China have coalesced into a group. You will see India do the same thing. You will see all of South Africa. The BRICS nations will all join up. And if I had to guess, they will issue at some point down the road, on the heels or on the back of the new Chinese digital yuan, which has already done 8 billion in sales, 8 billion in the last year. They will peg gold to that new currency and call it a BRICS nations currency, if I had to guess. However, I'm getting ahead of myself. The bottom line is simply this. What you are seeing for the first time since 1974 are countries that are doing deals outside the dollar for settlement and energy. And what that is going to do to the dollar ultimately is send them all home as people are dumping dollars in lieu of buying yuan or buying yen or buying ruble or buying rupee, whatever currency that OPEC says that you can use. When those dollars get dumped and inflation comes roaring home, you'll see a spike in interest rates. And when that happens, that does the dirty work for the Fed. The Fed doesn't have to take the blame. It'll be OPEC, it'll be Saudi, it'll be Putin, it'll be China. Not the fact that the Fed blew everything up with, over 60% of every dollar ever created in the history of the United States done in the last 2 years, creating these problems, creating the massive inflation and the massive distortions and misallocations in the markets. Problem is they're all inversely correlated to a rise in rates. You can see what's happened to the real estate market with just a 50 basis point increase in the federal funds rate. In 1980, Paul Volcker raised the federal funds rate to 19.75% to fight inflation. And these guys say they're getting tough on inflation and they're raising it 50 basis points, 0.5%. When inflation is 18 times that by their bullshit measurements, it's really 36 times that. So anyways, the bottom line is simply this. We will cross that Rubicon. We'll cross that line where people will wake up. The market will wake up and be, oh my God, we're in trouble. The Fed's trapped. It's either going to blow up the economy or blow up the currency. And for whatever reason, there are very few people who get this. Very few people who understand this, and less people who can tell me why the dollar is world reserve currency. And if you didn't understand what was happening because our media sucks, no one even knows that Saudi Arabia signed this agreement with Russia, or Nigeria signed this agreement with Russia, or they're part of the Belt Road Initiative, or all of these things that in a game of chess, the pieces are moving to surround your king, just like that. And we're cornered. And so, I hate to sound this way, but when you talk about silver and gold, they are a tool of price of gold and silver is a tool of misdirection. We are being misdirected away from the only thing that will protect you when everything blows up into equities and into treasuries and into the things that will, with the rest of the herd, will blow up when interest rates rise. So anyways, long-winded answer, not specific on what's going on with silver, other than to simply say it's a rigged market until it's not. And you have to use the subsidy that they're providing by holding the paper price down as incentive to add more insurance, because when this thing breaks, there's going to be nowhere safe to stand. I truly believe that. Farmland, precious metals, and just about nothing else. Anyone can feel free to chime in on the chat and tell me where they think is safe. But you look at cryptocurrencies, they're incredibly tied to Wall Street. All of this appreciation we've seen in the cryptocurrency market, where do you think that's come from? That's come from easy money, low interest rates, and tons and tons of money creation that has gone, a lot of it, into cryptocurrencies through hedge funds that have blown the price up. But look what happened to Luna. If you were worth $250 million a week ago, you're worth 50 cents right now in Luna, which was the, top 10 cryptocurrencies on the planet. And just like that, it's gone. It vaporized. And so I'm not saying that all cryptocurrencies will do that. But what I am saying is that when things get really dicey on Wall Street and the hedge funds start unloading, it's going to create a watershed event in cryptocurrencies too. So I don't put cryptocurrencies in the same light as I do physical precious metals. There's a place for Bitcoin. But you pull all that Wall Street money out from the market and watch the air just sink on the cryptocurrency market. You could see a bloodshed before it turns back around and goes higher. So I don't know.
So I got
So
something I wanna tell the audience real quick, and then I got a question for you, Andy, and I've been writing all your questions down that I'm seeing in chat, folks. So I'll try to get to them as many as I can. So here's something that I want all of you to realize why Andy's on tonight, why I want him to come on often is the market is very volatile. And I get asked a lot of questions about what should I do with my 401k? What if I have money in the bank? And I'll get to those questions for Andy here in a minute. What I want you to take away from tonight's show, and every time that Andy is on, I watch Economic Ninja 2. He puts out a lot of great information. And like he said the other day, he said that banks are telling people that if there is a financial collapse, they can and will take your money. That's what he put out. That's not what I said, but it definitely brought a lot of concern to me because I do have a little bit of money in retirement, and so I want people not to live in fear, but to listen to what information Andy is putting out, what we're trying to warn you about, and educate yourself and try to make what the best decision is for you and your family, whether it's your 401k, whether it's money in the bank, whether it's just prepping and taking care of your family and making sure that you guys have the way to make ends meet in case there is a financial collapse. I think it's evident. I think it's going to happen. When, I don't know, but I think, like you do, Andy, it cannot continue down the path it's going before it explodes. And when it does, like I was telling people the other night, you may go to bed tonight thinking that everything's going to be fine and wake up tomorrow morning with the market crashed and nowhere to go, nowhere to hide, and it's too late to react. So I just think it's wise for people to just really absorb this information, chew on it for a little bit, and try to make the best decisions that you can for yourself. So my question for me, Andy, which I've got about 4 or 5 other questions I would like to get to. My question for me is, after what you just told us, do you feel like if Russia, China, South Africa, India, BRICS, and the rest of them all kind of sign up, Saudi Arabia, and they all sign up and they do away with the Western dollar for world currency, does that leave America kind of hanging out there by itself?
yeah, it isolates us, but what it really does is all of those dollars come flooding home. And when those dollars come flooding home, there was one of the gals here in the chat said they've been saying this for decades. It's true, we have, but it's different now because for decades the dollar has been the safe haven asset, and I think it is viewed very differently right now. In fact, I think people are seeing the dollar for what it is. It's like the Wizard of Oz. It's the wizard behind the curtain, the little old man, not the big wizard that we all think it is. And I think that it's a very different situation. If that happens and all those dollars are dumped, they come home creating hyperinflation. If you think inflation is bad now, when those dollars come home, you have hyperinflation, real hyperinflation. And when that happens, interest rates spike to the moon. They move with each other, lockstep, inflation and interest rates. And that collapses everything in this economy. Not only would the dollar be crashing, but so would stocks, bonds, and real estate. There's your great reset. There's your statement from Klaus Schwab. You'll own nothing and be happy because you will have lost your ass. If interest rates were to spike to 20%, what would happen to the real estate market with interest rates on the 30-year mortgage at 28%? Done. What would happen to the stock market? It would blow up as corporations would literally, by the days, file bankruptcy. And the bond market would lose 99% of its value. And these are the three pillars of wealth in this country. So it's not even about doom and gloom. And, I hate having to speak this way because when, I've told you before, I've looked at gold and silver as wealth. I've accumulated it every 2 weeks since I started this company as a 19-year-old kid, because to me it's wealth. And I haven't bought it for the end of the dollar and all of the things that, that we talk about. But I never even thought these things were possible. When Klaus Schwab said this, I laughed like, yeah, right. Okay. But the more I think about it, I mean, we have weaponized the dollar and incentivized all of our foes to think, am I next? Are we next? Are we going to get our assets frozen? Are we going to be locked out of SWIFT? Are we not going to be able to make good on our bond payments? Are we done? So the incentivizing of a good portion of the world to find another system and to escape the dollar hegemony and the dollar influence and the ability of a government to unilaterally impose sanctions without even being voted on by Congress is something that the whole world has caught the attention of. And I think when that happens and those dollars come crashing, it will create chaos in this country. You cannot believe, because the Federal Reserve, through all of its stimulus and low interest rates, the manipulation of interest rates instead of letting the market set interest rates is what has created this problem, because it incentivizes people to go into debt. It tells businesses, hey, if money is free, I can expand, I can hire more people, I can build another building, I can do all this stuff. Money's free, right? Until it's not. And then all of a sudden you have infrastructure and assessments and assumptions made upon faulty narrative that all of a sudden, when the cost of money goes to the moon and everything changes, it all blows up simultaneously. And that's what's different right now, in that we never had to worry about the dollar losing its world reserve status. We do now. And the very, very fact that gold is reclassified tier 1, the very fact that the BRICS nations are joining together, the very fact that we're not part of the Belt Road Initiative, which is connecting 75% of the world with a new digital currency that's already done 8 billion in transactions. All of the pieces are in place for them to flip the switch. And if and when OPEC ever does say that, which would actually be in their best interest, and all those dollars are dumped, it gets very real, very, very fast. And I don't really see much of a way around it. And quite frankly, if I had a gun to my head, I would say this has all been orchestrated, because it gives us a rallying cry and the villain, and will allow them to usher in a central bank digital currency. It is the reset. It's a reset when interest rates go to the moon and the Fed has nothing to do with holding them down. They can't hold them down in that environment where dollars are globally being dumped. And that's when everything evaporates. It blows up as interest rates rise, because these asset prices are all inversely correlated to a rise in rates. You see, the market is supposed to dictate the rates and a fair return for the risk that you're assuming when you buy that currency or buy that treasury. But the fact that they've held those rates down for so long has created misallocations in capital and in resources, and an impossible time with price discovery. And you can see what's happened just by the rates going from 3% to 5.5%, what that's doing to real estate prices. What happens when the 30-year mortgage goes to 8 or 9%? And the cost of money is 3 times more than it was a year ago or 2 years ago. It creates a very big problem. So when we talk about gold and silver, and as cavalier as it sounds, it's not meant to be. Where we are going, the price right now does not matter. And it is only designed to misdirect you into believing the conventional popular narrative and lead you off the right path. And, I get it, though. I do get it. It's exhausting. It's tiring. But, you're watching the end of a historic run for the U.S. dollar.
Yeah.
Where, for the better part of the last 80 years almost, it's been the world reserve currency, with the exception of a couple of years from 71 to 74. And it's coming to an end, I think. And you can see that by all of the gold accumulation going to the east, the reclassification of it, and now the breaking of the petrostatus.
Well, this is my comment. Of course, there's always somebody out there that twists the words. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not an expert, nor do I ever claim to be one. I've never told anybody to take their money out of their 401ks or any of that. I said, educate yourself and make the best decision for you and your family. As far as the comments of profiting from gold and silver, that's a bunch of hogwash too. I've never said anybody is going to profit from gold or silver. I think there are a lot of things that all of us need to survive. I'm out there planting my garden as we speak. Earlier today, there are things that I'm doing to prep and make sure that my family is taken care of. But if you think for 1 second that your bag of seeds is going to get you everything that you've ever wanted in a financial collapse, I think you're fooling yourself and fooling everyone else out there that you're trying to promote that about. I think you should have a well-rounded survival kit. And what is that for LW? That is, I have a little bit of silver in my pocket. I have seeds. I have a garden. I have water. I have extra food. I have ammunition. And I have people around me that know how to hunt and fish like I do. I actually went out. I got my bow tuned up this weekend to just make sure that I have another way to go out and harvest meat if need be. A friend of mine has a hog that they asked if I wanted to purchase. Those are the things that I'm doing. So, for those of you out there saying we're trying to tell you that you will profit from gold and silver, I never heard that word come out of Andy's mouth one time, nor did I say it. But I think you're foolish if you don't at least look at the opportunity while silver is very cheap right now to put a little bit in your pocket. If you can only afford one coin, put one coin in your pocket. If you can afford more than that, great. But I've never been one that thinks that I'm going to buy $1,000 worth of silver and be a multi-millionaire overnight. I just don't think that that's reality.
If it happens, Mike, if that happens, be careful what you wish for, because that'll mean the dollar. That'll mean what I just said happened. You see, gold and silver don't go up. Imagine a bathtub, and on the ledge of the bathtub is a coin. I don't have a coin here. Normally I do.
I do.
Right,
I got a buffalo round right here.
Here's a silver bullet. So we'll pretend it's a silver bullet sitting on the ledge of the bathtub, right? And the water underneath is the dollar. If the plug gets pulled on the dollar, silver didn't go up. It's the dollar went down, and that is the idea. I mean, gold and silver have more or less maintained their purchasing power for the last 100 years. You go back as far as you want, and the purchasing power. I mean, you can talk about gold. A $20 gold piece is 1 ounce of gold, and those were the coins that were in circulation prior to 1933. $20 back then bought you a tie, a suit, a hat. I mean, the whole 9 yards. And a tailored men's suit was $20, or that ounce of gold. Today, $20 won't even buy you the tie, but that same ounce of gold that was in 1900 bought you a beautiful suit and tie and shoes and the whole 9 yards. Will still do that for you today. So gold and silver preserve purchasing power, even though it doesn't always seem that way. Over time, it does. And it's the currencies underneath us that are inflating or deflating or rising or falling. And in this case, it's a dollar that right now, I mean, look at it this way. Most currencies in the world are seeing gold at all-time highs. It's the US dollar that is artificially strong where it's not. But in most currencies around the globe, gold's at all-time highs. Not here. Gold is doing what it is supposed to do. The dollar is the prettiest mare in the slaughterhouse. And the fact that it's up at over a 104, 105, whatever on the Dixie index is ridiculous. At some point, that ends. And that's really what I'm talking about, is that it's never been closer to that situation, in my opinion. So yeah, I don't talk about owning gold and silver to profit. I mean, they may behave like an investment. To me, it's wealth. It's wealth, period. And it's been wealth for 5,000 plus years. So, you look at all the people of nobility going back to the Bible, and, gold and silver were accumulated as money and as wealth and not as an investment. And I think it's very true today, even though most people equate it with an investment. I don't. I equate it as historic wealth. In times of great uncertainty, it gives me comfort to fall back on its historical role.
My thing is, people seem to be missing the boat too. We're trying to put out information to give you a heads up and a warning of what could be coming our way. And I think some people are so focused on, well, they just want you to buy silver. No, that's not my purpose tonight. Would I like for you to buy silver? If you can afford it and you think that's the best decision for your family, absolutely, I think you should buy silver. But what you're missing the boat on is the information that Andy is putting out there about the Belt Road Initiative, about OPEC, about the petrodollar. That's the big ship that I hope you guys are paying attention to, that's sailing right in front of your face right now with nothing but information that Andy is giving to you guys for free right now, giving his time to us and saying, hey, This is what I'm seeing. This is what I've been seeing for decades. This is what I've been seeing for a very long time. This is the things that has been signed behind closed doors that nobody's reporting about. And that's the ship that I really want you guys to pay attention to. Picking up silver while it's cheap is not a foolish thing to do. That's a very smart thing to do. So pay attention to the information that Andy's putting out, because I think it's priceless.
You know what? I really appreciate that. And I will tell you that in my mind, that what's happening with the Federal Reserve is a sideshow. And it's what you just said to me is the most important thing. You have to watch what's going on in the BRICS nations. They are all, I believe, moving towards challenging the dollar for solo reserve status. And when you have a digital currency that's already transacted $8 billion in transactions over the last year, that is connecting 75% of the world, I believe they will all come together. I mean, who's the biggest producers of gold and importers and purchasers of gold in the world? China, Russia, and India, and South Africa. So you have the biggest producers, importers, and accumulators and owners of gold in the world, and gold is reclassified tier 1. You've incentivized everyone to find a new system. What did China do? They created the SIPS, Cross Interbank Payment System. It mirrors the SWIFT. And a lot of countries in Europe, even Western Europe, much to the anger of the West here, to the US, are signing on to it. They don't want to be held prisoner to the US and their sanctions if we do something or they do something that we don't approve of. So we're incentivizing people to do this. And that's why it almost seems as though this was orchestrated. Because you couldn't have done things more stupidly. If, look, if you own the world reserve currency, it is not up to you to decide who gets to use it, period. Everyone gets to use it. It's not up to you to say, you can't use it because we don't like what you did. The foolishness that, look, say what you want about war. It's horrible. We've given $20 billion to the Ukraine already, and they want to give them another $40 billion. That's $60 billion from an insolvent, broke country, and who's supposedly getting tough on inflation. Where the hell is that money going to come from? Are they going to borrow it from China? Are they going to print it, creating more inflation? That $60 billion, Mike, is more than Russia spends on their military in an entire year. It's more than the Department of Homeland Security spends in an entire year. And we're going to give it. Now, I feel bad for the Ukrainians. I do. And I feel bad for anyone involved with war, God forbid. Mm-hmm. But to give them money to try and save them at the expense of our own country is foolish. And we keep making more and more and more poor decisions. We're telling Finland, go ahead, join NATO. We keep poking and poking and poking a dude who's got terminal cancer and Parkinson's and is pissed off and has nuclear weapons. I mean, why? Imagine it was the other way around, that we're Russia and Mexico is Ukraine, and or the other way around, excuse me, whatever. What I'm trying to say is, imagine that it was Russia in Mexico instead. How can I say this? Yes, U.S. is Russia, Mexico is Ukraine, and Russia comes in and provides to Mexico $60 billion worth of missiles and drones, and provides the intelligence on where to drop the bombs and where to shoot the missiles, and does everything they can, stealing, locking up our money and freezing our assets and the assets of all of the American people abroad. How pissed off do you think people in this country would be? Do you think we would stand for that? And people don't look at that closely enough. It's a provocation of war. We would all be screaming, go to war, if they are our southern border, giving aid and intelligence and seizing our funds and all of these things. We need to stay the hell out of these conflicts. And the fact that they're not, and the fact that they just keep spending money and acting like it grows on trees, only cements the fact that ultimately the dollar's dead. I mean, we are insolvent. We have $120 trillion in liabilities, 30 trillion funded, over 100 unfunded. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, government and military pensions, and we think we can just come up with another $40 billion, 60 in total, and just give it away to
Yeah,
a
it's
country
ridiculous.
that's fighting a war that we should have nothing to do with and is only
It's
hastening the demise of the dollar. And if it were the other way around, and it was Mexico and Russia was doing this to us, can you only imagine the rhetoric on this show, what people would be saying?
yeah.
So, I think you need to think of it in terms of Vladimir Putin's point of view. Um, he's got no time or use for the dollar, and I guarantee you that they are behind the scenes trying as hard as they possibly can to bring the entire BRICS community away from this type of dollar dominance and all of the things that go along with it, like we're seeing right now in real time.
Let me make this statement to everybody listening right now. If you do choose to buy any gold or silver, make sure it's not paper. Make sure it's physical gold or silver, right? That's the best advice I can give you there. Andy, I've got quite a few questions here. Can we do a little bit of a rapid fire here to see
Yeah.
if we can bang through a few of them? Okay,
Yes.
how much silver is enough silver to buy? Because I know that's a question for some people. I saw it in chat. Should I continue to buy silver? For me personally, I'm going to answer this question. I bought enough silver that I thought would just get me through some tough months if I had to use it to barter with or to buy things with. That's just me personally. I don't have a lot of money, so I can't just go out and spend gobs and gobs of money on precious metals. But I know a lot of people are saying, well, what would be enough?
I like to answer that question a different way. What exposure do you want to an insolvent country that's 130 trillion in debt and is at the end of its rope? What exposure do you want to the dollar, and work backwards from there? You had mentioned something that Travis, the economic ninja, good buddy of mine, smartest guy. I mean, awesome guy and really smart. What he's talking about is bail-ins. For those of you out there that don't know what
Yes.
bail-ins is, it
Yep.
is illegal to do
Banks.
bailouts any longer. After 2008 financial crisis, Congress voted in bail-ins, which means you
Thank
are an
you.
unsecured creditor of the bank when it goes belly up. And during COVID, the banks were allowed to relinquish any and all reserve requirements. So in essence, if everyone goes to the bank at once and says, give me my money, they ain't got it. And so that's where the bank runs come into play. That's when the bank goes bankrupt and shuts down. And the systemic nature of everything, where counterparty risk becomes so pervasive. If a bank made a $50 million loan to a developer who goes broke, which starts the spiral, and it happens and it starts pulling down other banks and other institutions, and bang, just like that, you start to see these kinds of things. They will impose bail-ins. Another thing that people probably don't know about is at the same time they did that, they imposed gating legislations. And those are the people right now in their 401ks who are scared to be in the market and they feel safe in the money market. Well, in 2009, the money market started to go up, or 08, the money market went upside down because Lehman Brothers was a lot of the money markets were invested in the Lehman Brothers funds. And when Lehman went under, everyone started to panic and pull their money out of the money market. It's called breaking the buck. You don't even get back what you put in, and it created massive problems. So Congress voted in gating legislations, meaning you're trapped. You can't leave. They won't redeem you. They will not redeem you. People feel safe in cryptocurrencies. Coinbase just said the exact same thing. What did Coinbase say? They lost. Let me see if I have pull up the number real quick. I don't know if I have it. Give me 1 second. Coinbase lost. I don't know if I have it. Oh, here it is. So they reported a $430 million loss for quarter one. I'm just going to read this. Based primarily on lower trading volume, in the event of a crypto exchange goes bankrupt, Coinbase says its users might lose all the cryptocurrency stored in their accounts too. Now, what the hell does that tell you? How about the word rehypothecation? What that means is that your crypto is safe and Coinbase has been sold to you. So they rehypothecate it, thinking no one's going to come for it all at once, right? Well, what did the CEO just say? If it's supposed to be held safely on the exchange and the exchange goes belly up, they are saying that The exchange noted that in the event, if ever declared bankruptcy, the crypto assets we hold in custody on behalf of our customers could be subject to bankruptcy proceedings. Coinbase users would become general unsecured creditors, just like in a bank, meaning they have no right to claim any specific property from the exchange in proceedings. Their funds would become inaccessible. So that's why you got people say, if you own crypto, take it off the exchange, hold your own private keys. This is why you hear people say, if you own precious metals, take physical possession of it. Counterparty risk is going to become much more pervasive, where everyone's leveraged to the hilt and has nothing in terms of equity behind it, in terms of these institutions. And they borrow and they rehypothecate. Rehypothecate means selling the same asset 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20 times. That's how COMEX does it. There are, in one day, they will trade, I don't know, many hundreds of times the amount of silver on COMEX than could be stood for delivery. Way more than there is silver behind those contracts. This is what the, what's it called, in 1980, the Hunt brothers, this is what they did. They noticed that there were way more contracts on COMEX than there were bars behind the contracts. And they tried to buy all the contracts and take possession, blow up the price. Well, the exchange changed the rules on them in the middle and said, you can't be unlimited long, but you can be unlimited short. And all of those contracts they had to sell them, drove down the price, or they would have gone to jail. The bottom line is the establishment is lining up against you. The banks, the mutual funds, the cryptocurrency exchanges, and do not think for a moment that you won't see the exact same thing with your brokerage houses, the Schwabs, and all of these other where they don't even hold all of the certificates because they lend them out for people who short them or whatever they do. Mm-hmm. Counterparty risk is important. And I think that's kind of one of the things that we're talking about here is another reason to physically get out of the system and hold some metal outside the system, because when it breaks and the banks go belly up, you will see bail-ins where the banks are locked up and you will lose anything over FDIC limit. And FDIC is a scam. If Wells Fargo goes bankrupt, FDIC doesn't even have enough money to cover that, let alone all the other banks. So, but anything over a certain amount in Cyprus, when they did this originally, Greece and Cyprus, I think it was anything over $100,000 was bailed in. You are now a general creditor to the bank. They will impose gating. They will lock you out of your accounts and try to get a hold of, Fidelity or one of these big brokerages, Schwab, when the shit hits the fan. Good luck. I think that you have to prepare in many ways, not just food and water and guns and ammunition and take better care of your body and practice shooting, all the things that I think are super important. But you got to think about what could happen. Why the hell would they ever impose gating and bail-in legislations if it wasn't something that ultimately they saw coming down the road? And
exactly.
That's exactly what Travis was talking about, the economic ninja. It's that the bank is saying, I mean, the bankers being honest.
They're telling you. They're telling you. Yeah. They're telling you ahead of time. If this happens, your money's not safe. So I don't know if you answered the question about how much silver is enough.
I don't know. How much dollars do you want to hold?
Exactly.
I think you buy as much silver as you can without it bothering you, without losing sleep, without thinking that you have way too much. Because to me, remember, I've always said it's not an investment, it's wealth. So you're just holding your wealth in a different form that is not susceptible to the deleveraging of the dollar market. And yeah, it hasn't performed the way that we thought it would, but it will ultimately. Mathematics, logic, and economics will dictate the outcome of this. So another thing I've always been consistent about saying too is that ultimately you want to be in gold, because gold was reclassified tier 1, but the pathway to getting more gold is through silver. It is the opportunity because of the ratio between gold and silver. And they would not have reclassified gold tier 1 quietly, which is, I consider, the second biggest event of my career, maybe the first, if it weren't going to happen. So somewhere down the road, they're going to say, oh, here's our new central bank digital currency pegged by a tier 1 asset because we don't want dollars anymore. The only other tier 1 asset. So these signposts along the way, either you choose to see them or you don't. You can think I'm just trying to sell silver or not. I'm going to say something that I probably shouldn't say, but I want people to understand this. We did $600 million in sales last year, Mike, and we're a family owned company. And that was many times, that's an unusual number. I don't need to sit out here and go online and tell people to do these things. I do it because I, honest to God, feel that it's something I need to do. And I don't know why I even feel it, but I do. This is my 4th podcast today. I'm not doing it to ring the cash register. I'm doing it because I feel that it's something that needs to be said. And I don't need to, but I do. And I always come on when you ask me, and I always am happy to do so. And I think there are very few people telling the truth anymore. And maybe it means something to me. It allows me to sleep well at night, it allows me to look my kids in the face and feel like I'm doing something to pay back. But I don't know. This is real. And I don't think it's in my entire career, I have never felt the way that I have. You go back and look at all the podcasts I've done since 2010. I've never spoken this way. I talk about gold as being wealth and as insurance, and everyone needs to own some. Now I see it very differently. And when Klaus Schwab said, you will own nothing on the Great Reset and you will be happy, if what I see happens, everyone will be happy to own nothing because they will have lost everything, and they will start over and rent and get a new central bank digital currency, and it'll bring everyone down to a common denominator. And the only way you survive a scenario like that is to lose less than everyone else, because everyone's going to lose in that scenario, and he or she who loses least wins. That's how it all plays out in what I see coming down. And I hate to be that way. Look, you're already talking about no baby formula, shortage of diesel fuel on the East Coast. If that doesn't tell you that there's more shortages coming, what does? Right? I talked to a guy today, a client of mine who's in the car business. He said that he couldn't even get rotor pads or something for a Ford F-150, the most common truck in the United States or in the world. Couldn't get rotors for the brakes for like 4 to 5 weeks. I mean, the supply chain problems are only going to get worse. And if you see the fact that there's a shortage of diesel fuel on the East Coast this whole summer, what does that tell you to the goods making it to the end user? How about this? Let's talk about this for a moment. How about credit? We're entering a period of time where credit is going to be reined in, right? No one wants to extend more credit in this environment with rates rising and uncertainty. But think of how much credit is used in one loaf of bread. I don't know if you and I talked about this on your show before. If I did, you can stop me. But one loaf of bread, how much credit does it take to get from the ground to the store? Well, you got the farmer who is on credit to buy his $600,000 combine, the diesel fuel to fill it, and the seeds to plant it. He does that, grows the wheat, harvests it, and then gives it to a trucking company who's on credit for their trucks and trailers, who brings it to the flour mill, who uses credit to run their operations and pay their salaries, who then gives it back to the truck after it's refined and to bring it to the baker. And the baker then is on credit running his operation, who makes the bread and then sends it on another truck on credit to the store, who's using credit to put food on the shelves. And if all of a sudden credit goes dark, then what happens? So all of these things that are starting to happen have never been a consideration before. So for the comment that person said, they've been saying this for decades, you're damn right we have. And I've never looked at anything the way I see this. But I will say this, virtually everything that my father and he's been retired for a long time, but he used to write a newsletter. We would sit down every night and talk about things. And I'll tell you, almost everything that's ever been talked about in Miles Franklin has come true. And we're not soothsayers. The things that we say are simply based upon logic, mathematics, and economics. And ultimately, mathematics wins. You cannot run from it forever. And I think these are we're finally having to pay our bar tab. And we're going to. We've been living on credit for a very, very long time, well above our means. And I don't know, Mike, I think it's real for the very, very first time. I truly think this is getting real.
Well, Andy, I think you're spot on as usual. Here's a couple more questions. What's Miles Franklin's spot price right now? And then one of our viewers, I know this is a frequently asked question, asked, can we buy a couple $100 of silver with credit card?
Yeah, soon you'll be able to, but you don't want to. I'm looking on my website here to see what prices. You don't want to use a credit card. I mean, look, we only mark things up 1%, 1.5%, on a very small order, maybe 2 or 2.5, where it's just a few coins. Credit card processing, it's almost 4%. So on a $10,000 order, you are quadrupling your what you're paying for the item. It's always better. The best way to do it is what's called e-check or ACH, where you give us your routing and account number. It does take 10 days, even though it clears your account quicker. A U.S. bank makes us wait 10 days, and it's just the best way to do it. And all they need to do is send an email to info@Miles Franklin until the new website is done. It's getting really close. We send out a current inventory. We answer questions, and when the time is right, when they want to purchase, they can send a check. They can do a wire. They can do an e-check or send Bitcoin or a few other cryptocurrencies. And no, we don't take those cryptocurrencies. We use a service called BitPay, which they immediately transfer the amount of cryptocurrency that the customer gives to them into US dollars into my bank account. I did a $2 million order on BitPay on a Saturday night, and it was in my bank account in like 10 minutes in the middle of the night. It puts
Wow.
banking to shame. I mean, the efficiency of some of these distributed ledgers. There is room in this world for distributed ledgers. I just fear that we're heading down a path that it's going to be shoved down our throat in the form of a central bank digital currency. Anyways, the bottom line is you will be able to use credit cards shortly, but I have to pay the credit card processing company almost 4%. So that's passed on to the customer, quadrupling the amount of commission, I guess you could call it, or premium, or whatever whatever name you want to call it, that you're paying above our cost. Right now, I don't know if you can see this. This is back end of my website. That's silver bid and ask. So I think 2178 is the ask right there. That is the silver price. 2160 bid, 2178 ask.
Gotcha. Is there a minimum?
No.
No minimum. Okay. I know this was earlier in the show. Somebody said, should they be buying rubles right now? I don't know if you really want to answer that. We're not financial advisors, but I've heard some people say it doesn't hurt.
You know, if you look at the value of the ruble, it's stronger now than it was prior to the sanctions, which tells you what good sanctions do. I don't know. I mean, look, anything that you do in that speculative category, it's fine as long as you are very modest in the way that you deploy it. In other words, you put it up at the very top of your financial pyramid, where you're using a small amount of funds and hoping for a home run. And if you lose it all, you're not heartbroken or destitute. But you know, these people, there are a lot of people who have bought. I think it's the Iraqi dinar and the Vietnamese dung or dang, whatever it is. And I mean, I think it's a huge scam. I really do. I think it is a massive scam. And the companies that have done this, I think, are just stealing money. So here again, that's speculative as hell. And you could see this turning a million different directions. But I mean, I don't know. I certainly would buy that long before I would buy the Iraqi dinar. And where the hell you even buy it or how you buy it nowadays with sanctions, I don't even know that you can.
Gotcha. Here's what is your premium? And I don't think everybody understands that you have different premiums for different things that you sell, correct?
Real quick, Mary Freeland, you need to find a new bank yesterday, immediately. I mean, immediately. So any bank that tells you how much you can or can't spend of your money, you need to get the hell out of there. I went to Truist Bank here in Florida the other day, and I had a $2,000 check from the mortgage company that I had overpaid in my escrow account, and I had another check for like $1,200, and I'm leaving the country for 10 days here pretty soon, and I wanted to get some cash. And so then I thought about it, and I'm like, you know what? I'd like all 20s. And the lady says to me, well, it's going to be a stack like this big, $3,500 or whatever. And I'm like, okay, that's no problem. And then she looks at me and she says, what are you going to do with it? And I wanted to tell her something really profane, using 4-letter words, and tell her to, kiss my ass basically. But I didn't. And I said, I got some ideas to use with it. But the point of it is banks are really becoming very, very strange and asking what you're going to do with your money. But Mary says that her bank is telling her that she can't spend more than a certain amount of money on silver. I mean, I've never heard of anything so crazy. I'd leave that bank so fast it's not even funny. I'm sorry, Mike. What was your question?
What is your premium? But you have different premiums on different things that you provide for people. The different types of silver have different premiums, correct?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I'm a U.S. Mint distributor or authorized reseller, one of only 24 in the world. I have an affinity for silver eagles, but I tell everyone they're too expensive. I mean, at 12, $13 silver spot, I'm cheaper than just about everyone in the country. I haven't even looked the last few days to see what they're at, but they were somewhere in that neighborhood. You can buy 1,000-ounce bar for, I don't know, somewhere around $1.50 over the price of silver, but it's yay big and it weighs 70 pounds. So somewhere in between, you find an item that matches with your idea of utility and value. I like the kilo bar, the 10-ounce bar. 10-ounce bar is about the size of a Halloween candy bar. The kilo bar is about the size of an iPhone, 32.15 ounces. And they're much less money. They offer great utility. We do have rounds. We do have coins like the Philharmonic and the Britannia or the Kangaroo. We do have these coins, but in all the years I've done this, I'm having a really hard time getting used to these premiums. The question is this the new reality? I don't know. And remember, I was saying 0.5% allocation. What happens if it becomes 5? Because people wake up and the markets are crashing. Overnight, everything disappears. Premiums go to the moon anyway. So, yes, everything has different premiums. Eagle is 11 or 12 or 13. I don't even know. The Maple Leaf's like 7. The Philharmonic's like 5.5 or 6. The kilo bar is 350 over. The 10-ounce bar is 375 over. I mean, something along these lines. Okay. Everything is different price. The 1-ounce round is 4 something over spot. I'm not looking at it right now, but yes, that's like going into a car dealership and say, how much is a car? Which car, how many, what make, what model, etc.
You guys check him out at info@milesfranklin.com. He has the website there. It won't have the prices on there, but the contact information is there, and you guys can go ahead and ask all those questions. He's got
our
great
new site
staff.
will have the prices, Mike. It will.
Okay,
but I promise your Liberty Warrior Nation listeners will beat every price out there from a reputable company. So yeah, it's a little bit more of a pain in the ass to do it old school rather than have it right there online. I get that, and that's why we're building a new site. But I'll make it worth people. We will make it worth your listeners' while to shop with us. Not only have we never had a customer complaint, yours won't be the first in almost 33 years, but we will make sure that you guys are getting super, super good prices, personalized service from the only really major licensed and bonded precious metals company in the industry. Every other company, just about everyone throughout the United States, most of them anyway, are not licensed and bonded. Minnesota, my home state, although I moved to Florida, it's the only state in America where there's licensing and bonding. So not only will you get, I think, get the best price from a company that I think has the best reputation in the industry, and we're the only major company that's licensed and bonded and background checked every year. So the safest transaction too. I know it's not as easy, but I know the prices aren't there, but you can call us, see what we're charging, and then shop us, and you'll see that you'll be glad that you did.
Yeah, I can't speak for Andy, but 90% junk silver, I would say, would be a good deal. There's a comment in here. I think gold is good too. Andy sells gold too, But for a lot of people who live paycheck to paycheck, the way to gold is through silver. So yeah, if you got the money and you can afford to buy a couple ounces of gold, I'd say go for it.
Do
But
you
for
know how
some
many
people,
people? Do you know how many people are living paycheck to paycheck in this country? What
let's see
percentage?
the new number that just came out. I want to say it's somewhere 75% or higher. I thought it was like 3
70.
out of
I
4.
heard it was 70. That's right.
70%. Yeah,
70% of everyone in this country is living paycheck to paycheck.
that's
And that
horrible.
we
That's
are
horrible.
not in position to sustain what's coming. And this is more reason to prepare. Absolutely.
Here's 3 questions, and they all tie together. I know there's a lot of people out there listening right now. We're not financial advisors. We can't tell them what to do with their money or what to do with their 401k. That's why I keep preaching, educate yourselves and try to make the best decisions you can for you and your family. So if people have 401ks, I know we've talked about this before. What should they do? What can they do? What are some of the options? If people have money in the bank, which we just talked about, if somebody has $20,000 in the bank, or 50 or 60 or 100,000, $200,000 in the bank, and we just talked about a bank collapse, what are they to do? And this question here, can you do your whole 401k? That's what we have. Fidelity, no help on advice. So I don't know if they're complaining that Fidelity hasn't been able to give them any kind of advice of what to do with their 401k. But anyway, maybe we can talk what you would do if you had money in a situation like that, or what I would do in a money situation like that. But I don't feel comfortable telling people what they should do. But I definitely want to try to educate people and maybe give them a scenario what I would do.
Well, a 401k is different than a self-directed IRA. And a 401k is an employer-sponsored program where they match. And if anyone has one of those and they are still working, chances are there's not much they can do. In a very rare instance, they can. If they are no longer working at that establishment, then it would be rather foolish to leave it within the confines of the 401k. Not only are you not being matched, but 401ks are kind of like a mutual fund where they have baskets where you can place it. You cannot control the investment. You cannot buy individual stocks or precious metals or other things. So when you leave the company and you have this old 401k, whether you buy gold or not, you must roll it into a self-directed IRA, and that's a tax-free maneuver. You contact a custodian. The one that I use most of the time for precious metals is a New Direction in Louisville, Colorado.
Yeah, New Direction. They're awesome. I've dealt with them too. Great service.
And that, that says a lot, because typically these custodians don't have great service, and I work with all of them that do. And now when you roll that 401k into a self-directed IRA, now you self-direct it. You can buy common stock, you can buy bonds, you can buy physical precious metals if you're at the right custodian, like New Direction. A couple dozen of them in the country allow it. And that metal gets held by a depository until you either sell it or take distribution. And one of the neat things about an IRA where you're allowed to own precious metals in it is what's called the in-kind distribution feature, which allows you to distribute the metal held in the IRA to you in lieu of a cash distribution. So really good for someone nearing retirement age. It's a taxable event, but the physical metal that is being held for you will be returned to you as a distribution, which is pretty cool. And so again, if you have a 401k and you're still with the employer, chances are they're not going to let you leave. You can talk to whoever administrates it and say, can I move a portion of it? Some will let you move 10 or 20 or 30% into a self-directed IRA. But if not, then you have to wait until you're no longer there any longer. And if you are no longer at that company and you still have a 401k, no matter if you want precious metals or not, get it out of there, move it into a self-directed IRA so you at least have the ability to control what you put it into rather than baskets. And a lot of people in that position, if they're scared, they put it into a money market. Remember what happens with the money markets? They can get gated, which means you can't leave if the shit hits the fan. You're stuck. And you have lower priority than the employees at that company. If you think fidelity sucks, imagine what any of these custodians will do when everyone is blowing up their phone and you don't even work for that company anymore. You're going to be at the bottom of the list. So I would just simply say, if you own a 401k, get it out of the system, the 401k system, into a self-directed IRA if you're no longer employed. If you own a current self-directed IRA and you want to buy precious metals, well, yeah, you can roll that over to one of the custodians like New Direction or Equity Trust or Entrust, or there are a few others that allow physical precious metals to be held within the IRA. And when a lot of people will call it a precious metals IRA, it's really not the right way to label it, because New Direction allows precious metals, but it is a self-directed IRA that allows you to invest in precious metals. It's not a precious metals only IRA. You could have stock in Apple in the same account as you have physical gold. The only difference is the physical gold and silver is held at a depository. It's not even held within the bricks and mortar of the IRA custodian. So anyways, not really that complicated. The bottom line is the best part about it is the ability to take a in-kind distribution, which I think is pretty cool.
Yes, that is. And I did go through that process, just so you guys know. They have great service and was easy to really do. Something that I forgot to say, and Tracy poked me a little bit. If you guys wouldn't mind hitting the like button and sharing this video out, I think it's important. If you guys are watching this on Truth Social, share it out. If you guys are watching this on Twitter, share it out. Facebook, share it out. Please get this information out. So the second part to that question, because a lot of people were asking, I have family members and friends who also have money in the bank. 20,000, 50,000, 100,000, $200,000-$300,000 in the bank, Andy. Should they, after Economic Ninja came out and said, hey, the banks go belly up, they may take your money. You just read the thing from that Bitcoin deal where they said if you got money in that program, you may lose it. I mean, if you had that kind of money sitting in an account, what would you do?
I mean, I'm the wrong guy to ask that question because I've been thinking this is going to happen for a long time. I'm the little boy who cried wolf. Although, like I always say, the wolf comes at the end of the story. I'm sincere about what I'm saying. I believe it in my heart and soul. I act upon it. I don't just do it. Or don't just say it. I do it. I would leave as much cash in the bank as I need to run my household, pay my bills. I would have 10 to 15,000 in that scenario, maybe more, 20 in 10s and 20s. I told you I got all those in 20s. Every time I go to the bank, I'll take something, or a cash machine, take a couple $100 out every few days if you can, because if things get really bad for a very short period of time, I think cash will be king. And I would have as much in precious metals as would allow me to sleep well at night. And again, it's not in order to get wealthy. It is to get out of harm's way in what is coming. If what he says happens, if what I say happens, the least safe place to be is a bank. And think about how hypocritical these banks really are, or what kind of a deal they're really giving you. If you go right now to take out a mortgage, you're going to pay 5.5%, but they're going to pay you 0.5% in your savings account, or less than that. So that's how they make money, by making loans, and you are not being paid enough return, commensurately anyway, for the risk of being in there. So I don't think putting 50-60% of that into physical precious metals or more is crazy. I don't. I think it's in a world as freaky as this one is, all of a sudden, I don't see that as being a problem at all. I think again, you ask yourself, what exposure do you want to this system, and work backwards. An insolvent government that is doing stupid things to promote the end of the dollar hegemony, I think you work backwards from there. And so I don't know, leaving 100 grand or 80 grand or 75 grand in the bank, and then taking the rest of those funds and deploying them into getting ready, buying a gun, buying ammunition, training, buying enough food, buying a lot of water and a lot of food, and getting prepared, buying gold and silver. I mean, getting prepared. And I think it's important. It's really important to be prepared, and not just a tube of Silver Eagles and a couple cans of beans and a case of water. That's not going to do it. You're going to need more than that. And be cognizant. Do whatever you can, whenever you can, and put it away. So that the worst thing that happens, you got a whole bunch of extra water and a whole bunch of extra food, and you bought a gun to protect yourself, and no one wants to ever use a gun to protect themselves ever. Just like no one ever wants to put on if you ever went on a cruise, the first day you go there, they make you put on a life raft, a life jacket, and simulate the boat going down. You go to your station and they tell you what's going to happen. Well, no one ever wants that to happen. You don't ever want to put on a life vest when you have to.
Yep.
Same thing here. I think it's time to prepare. When the government is telling you there's going to be food shortages, when 18 food processing plants have burnt down in the last year, when the biggest pork producing plant in the United States is owned by the Chinese, when there's a diesel fuel shortage, and there's going to be a shortage in the summer, supply chain problems are going to get a whole lot worse. And so I just think I would take that money and redeploy it into being prepared. And whatever money that I did not want in the bank, after assessing all of this, I put it in gold and silver after I've taken care of protecting my family and making sure that I've got everything covered. To buy the gun, to buy the bullets, to buy the food, to buy the water, all that stuff is what, a couple grand at most, maybe less. And now you're set. Now you figure out what to do with the money, and whatever you don't want to lose, if things really get bad, put it in gold and silver. At least you have it under your own roof, and there's no counterparty risk.
That's what I was getting ready to say. I want to say thank you to conservative cowboy out there. You've really been helping me out on Twitter and Truth Social, reposting all my stuff. I really appreciate you putting me out there like that. It's much appreciated. This is my thought on money in the bank. If I can't physically touch it, I'm concerned that I'm going to lose it. So if I can turn the cash that I have in the bank into something that I can hold on to every night, put in my safe, buried in my backyard, I feel a lot more comfortable with how volatile the markets are and what I see coming our direction. I wouldn't want any paper in the bank if I could help it. And that's my comment. But here was a question that I thought was a good question. I don't know if we've heard this question, Andy, and all the times that you've been on the show. What if they have a trust that is in their name? Is that the same thing as a 401k, or I don't know much about trust. Could you give any advice on that?
A trust is it's a way to pass money on to your children, your future generations, so that the government doesn't take it in taxation. Sure, a trust can be the purchaser of the metal, and there's no problem with that at all. The only, I guess the only argument that I would say against it, and it's really not a super valid argument, but when you put it in the trust, you declare it, and you have a trustee that knows you own this gold and silver, even though it has a lot of protections from taxation. Part of me would say, look, don't put all of it in the trust. Put some of it, most of it, in the trust, and leave some outside the trust if you value more privacy. In the end, I don't think taxation is really the issue here. It's not what I'm focusing on. And for a trust, it would be someone who has a very large position. Typically, trusts are for people that have large estates, and they're looking for ways to pass it on to their family without having it be part of the estate tax issue. I think Trump's estate tax is he had it extend it, or he raised it to a much, much higher level, 25, $35 million. I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's due to expire in 2025 or 2026. So if you're going to do that, you would want to get it in a trust and do all of that before that happens. You want to do it in the next year or two. But first step is you have to open up a trust, and if you have one, then yeah, there's no problem at all with it being listed as the purchaser of the metal and held within the trust. So not a problem at all.
Great answer, Andy. As we wrap this up tonight, thank you so much for joining us as always, and thanks for all your support with LWN. If you guys feel the need, if you guys have listened to the information tonight and you're saying, you know what, I want to get a little bit of gold, I want to get a little bit of silver. Don't forget, graduations are coming up. My daughter graduates here in about a week and a half. That's what she's getting for graduation. From multiple family members. So, you know, my daughter's going to score pretty good with some nice silver coins for graduation. And Father's Day is also around the corner. So another great time to buy. So if you guys do that, go to info@milesfranklin.com, use promo code Liberty Warrior Nation, and Andy will make sure that you guys are treated fairly. And it's great service. I'm telling you, I just ordered last week, actually, and I think it was Justin I dealt with. I think it was Justin. Man, he was right on the ball. I emailed him. He got right back to me. He made everything happen and then sent me an invoice receipt. And, you know, I wait my 10 days. I did an ACH check transfer, guys. It was quick. It was easy. Just a routing number, an account number. Boom. I was locked into the price. That's the other thing about Miles Franklin. If you guys order today, whatever the price is today, you'll be locked in. So you don't have to worry about, you know, the price going up on you. Just make sure you order today while the price is low. So
Yep,
there was,
that's exactly right, and it is locked in, and we try to make it as easy as possible. And I think the one thing that we're a relationship-based company, which is kind of a fleeting idea these days, and but I think where we're going, relationships will be important, and if you called me in a crazy moment, Mike, I'd take your call, and that's the thing, it's like, I think it's important to understand that you'll never understand what good reputation and a relationship is until there's a problem. And so, I'm not saying that we're not, the price isn't even an issue here. We're going to be as competitive as anyone, but I struggle personally with moving towards having an online system. It's something that I've always said I didn't want to do, but I know I have to. I can see from the comments here, people want it. They want to see the price. They want to use a credit card. I get it. But I can promise you it'll be a good experience given the opportunity. And I do appreciate it. And I love being on the show, and I love, I get a good feeling, and I can tell by the comments what kind of people listen to this show, and they're the kind of people that I choose to associate with and be with, and they're the kind of people that look at the world the way that I do. And so it's my pleasure. And if there's anything I can do for the Liberty Warrior Nation, we will. So, and you too, Mike. So yeah, you just let me know what we can do, and
appreciate that.
we're happy to help.
Here's my final thought that I'm going to leave with tonight. Let's say that you guys buy silver, buy gold, and nothing happens. One, at least you have some physical wealth. Two, Andy and his company will buy it back from you guys. You can sell gold and silver at any time. So really, what do you have to lose? What do you have to lose except for maybe some sleepless nights and some worry out there, worrying about what the economy is going to do and are you going to be taken care of? Because even if you step out in faith and buy a little bit of silver or buy a little bit of gold today or tomorrow with Miles Franklin or whenever you can afford it, in my opinion, you have nothing to lose and everything to look forward to, because like I said, Andy and other places out there will buy it back. Other private individuals will buy it from you. So it's not like you could never get rid of it. It's very precious. That's why they call it precious metals. And in my opinion, I think it's a great investment.
Well, I appreciate that. And, to Rebecca Pierce. Rebecca, I'm happy to sell you 1 ounce of silver whenever you want it. You know, it's not about how many ounces that you buy. It's buy what you can. Just try to get some savings outside the system. And you're right. And you know, it's like fire insurance policy. You don't come home and say, "Shit, my house didn't burn down. I just paid my premium today." You know, it's one of these deals where I think no one ever wants to buy insurance, because insurance is, you know, what are the chances of it happening? But when it does, you realize how happy you are that you have it. So I think that's kind of the idea here, and it's you know, whatever you can afford. We're happy to work with people, and you're right. I think that's the way you have to look at it. You look at it as insurance, you look at it as wealth, and you put it away and hope you never need to use it. And if you do, you're damn glad you have it. And it's not just for an emergency; it could be for an opportunity too. Because when all this shakes out, you know, in this environment where everything collapses, you get a company like BlackRock that will come in and they'll buy up everything at pennies on the dollar, and they'll own the whole country. There will be opportunities when the dust settles. America is not dying, but we're going to go through some pain, and that pain will be economic pain and all of the social issues that go along with it. But when the dust settles, those people who have retained some dry powder, I think will be able to really pick and choose a whole bunch of great opportunities that a lot of people won't even have the opportunity to do. And I think gold and silver could offer that. So it's not just for emergency, it could be for an opportunity. And if not, you give it to your kids. And like I've said on your show before, long after the dollar bills in our wallet are hanging from a frame in the Smithsonian, gold and silver will still be worth something. They will be considered immutable wealth, like they have for the previous 5,000 plus years.
Amen. All right. Well, as usual, Andy, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for all the help with Liberty Warrior Nation, LWN. It's always a pleasure to have you on. I can't wait to, I never wish for bad things to happen to any of us and here in our nation, but you know what, just to stay ahead of it as much as we possibly can and be informed. I appreciate you coming on and doing that with us. So with that being said, folks, this is another one in the books for tonight. Remember, info@milesfranklin.com. It's there on the screen. You guys can call the 1-800 number. It's 1-800-822-8080. Use the promo code Liberty Warrior Nation. Andy's staff is ridiculously good and helpful, and they've answered all my questions. And I've bought now twice, and I've had great experiences both times. So thank you, Andy, for another great night.
Question for you, Mike, real quick. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Is this, can people stream this tomorrow or the next day? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So, if you'd be so kind as to send me the link to this show, and I'll put it up on our newsletter, which goes out to 40,000+ people, and we'll get a whole bunch of more Liberty Warrior Nations joining your daily shows. So if you'd be so kind as to do that, and again,
absolutely.
info@milesfranklin. Make sure and mention Liberty Warrior Nation, and we'll make it a good experience. And I'll be back in town the first week in June. I'd love to come back on then and take a look at the world and see what's happening in the next couple of weeks.
Absolutely. I'll have Denise reach out to you. We'll get you scheduled. I love it, Andy. Thank you so much. All right, folks.
Take care.
Yep. God bless. Love you all. I'll be back tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for devotions. God bless and have a great night.
God bless.
Hoping for a sincere performance, but open to finding the moment, to finding out where I'm headed now. Looking for a sign of disaster, so I can make it there faster. I'm weighing the consequences out. I can see in all directions. It's all open to interpretation, but I see colors that how you can blend in with the crowd. I'm so scared, so damn afraid to look. I'm so sick of talking. I'm wearing the words out, words out. I can see in all directions. It's all open to interpretation, but I see colors that are breaking from the other side, the other side. When I make mountains out of summer trails, when I buckle under all the details, I'll keep going till I make it to the other side, the other side. When it feels like everyone's out to get me, I see the river on the back of my